Hello, and welcome to the 741 channel. Thank you for stopping by. So today, I'm going to talk about some changes that look like they're going to be implemented in the Part 95 rules governing the personal radio services, and in particular, CB, GMRS, and FRS. So let's head over to the computer and take a look at this document that my friend Ryan found on the FCC website. Now, if you want to see a copy of this document for yourself, I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So here's a look at the document that Ryan sent me. So this document outlines 3 petitions for changes to Part 95, which are the set of rules established by the FCC that govern sort of the CB radio, GMRS, FRS, MERS type radio services. So here's a look at the 3 basic petitions that are in this document. Now I'm going to work from the bottom up. Now the first one at the bottom is a request from Medtronic to clear up some typographical errors in the rules. That seems like pretty much just a clerical thing that needs to get cleared up. So because that issue deals primarily with just medical radios, it doesn't really have any effect on me and probably most of you watching this as radio hobbyists and enthusiasts. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that one in this video. So the second petition, the one in the middle of the page, is a request from Motorola to allow automatic and periodic location and data transmissions within GMRS and FRS. What it looks like under the current rules is that positioning data is allowed on GMRS and FRS, but it's all manual. So I guess what that means is you probably have to push a button or maybe PTT or something like that in order to get your position to transmit. And what it looks like Motorola wants to do is allow those transmissions to be made automatically. And what it looks like to me is they want to develop some sort of automatic GPS positioning feature to include with their radios and market to, outdoor enthusiasts and things like that. So that seems like a pretty interesting and useful feature, especially if they can roll it into something that's pretty user-friendly. Now, as an amateur radio enthusiast myself, I've dabbled a little bit with APRS, which is sort of a similar type of thing where we are able to use a GPS receiver and transmit coordinates over the ham radio frequencies and have our positions be able to be tracked. So, like I said, if Motorola can develop that same type of thing for GMRS, I think that would be well received by a lot of the current users and maybe even attract more users into GMRS and FRS, especially outdoor enthusiasts or maybe off-roaders, hunters, things like that. And at the top of the page, and the one that triggered Ryan to send this over to me, is Cobra's petition requesting that the FCC allow FM modulation on the CB band. So currently under the Part 95 rules, FM is not allowed on the CB band within the United States. Allowing FM on the CB band seems like a no-brainer to me. Now, it makes sense to me that Cobra would want to put FM in a CB radio. It's another feature that they can sell over here in the United States and market, but it's also something where they're already developing and selling CB radios with FM circuitry in them in the UK. And now what they can do is sell those same radios here in the United States. They don't have to change anything to market those here. So it simplifies their production a little bit, I would think. And of course, other CB manufacturers as well, not just Cobra. And on the user side of things, I think FM might be an interesting and well-received mode. So I would think that the FM modulation mode might work a little bit better for more casual radio users, especially those that may be more used to working with GMRS and FRS. The off-roading community kind of comes to mind first, where they are not necessarily radio enthusiasts, but they want to have radios in their off-road vehicles to talk with other people in their party or event that they're out off-roading with. Now, I know there's sort of a kind of a duality in the off-roading community right now. I think a lot of them use GMRS and FRS, but there's also a lot of people out there that they just don't want to bother with going to get a GMRS license. They'd rather just go buy a CB radio off the shelf and be done with it, put it in their rig, and be able to kind of talk to their party. Now, as most radio enthusiasts know, the AM modulation scheme is a little more susceptible to noise and things like that. So especially if you have a modified off-road rig, you may get spark plug noise or alternator noise or things like that on your CB radio that would be detrimental to communications or maybe just downright annoying. So I can see switching over to an FM modulation scheme that would help kind of cut some of those noise sources out and give the users a little bit better experience with CB radio. So speaking as a radio enthusiast, I really think adding FM to CB is a great idea for a lot of reasons. One, for those of us that like to tinker, it's something else to try. I think for those people that are just getting into CB now, that are technically minded and want to learn a little bit more about radio, but don't want to quite just jump right into sort of the ham radio spectrum all at once, it gives them one more thing to kind of tinker with and experience before they make that leap and get their ham radio license. So I guess what my point is that by adding FM to AM and single sideband on CB radio, it's just one more little kind of technical nugget to help draw in those technically minded people and possibly getting them interested in the hobby to the point where they'll, go for their ham radio license at some point. So if I scroll down a little further in the document, I want to draw your attention to this paragraph on sheet 2. And what it's basically saying is that this document is going to be presented for tentative consideration by the FCC at its August 5th, 2021 open meeting. Now, barring any opposition from the FCC during this meeting, it seems like these 3 items will be passed into the rule book. So now scrolling down to page 3, taking a look at the discussion section, this is where things get a little bit interesting. So it starts off talking about the COBRA petition. And what it looks like I'm reading here is that at some point in the past, the FCC discussed the matter of allowing FM on CB band, and they basically came to the conclusion that if they did that, it would fundamentally change the spirit of the service, and that's why they sort of denied it and didn't allow it. But if we continue reading through this discussion section, it sounds like in 2017 is when COBRA filed this petition for reconsideration of adding the FM modulation scheme to CB, and it looks like there were internal discussions, and looking at bullet point 6 here, after considering additional information, the FCC concluded that allowing manufacturers to add FM as an optional modulation scheme would not substantially change the fundamental nature of the CB radio service. And at this point, it also looks like President stepped in and started supporting the COBRA petition, which probably had a little bit to do with the reconsideration. And if we scroll down and look at bullet point 7, it looks like the FCC has granted the petition and is going to amend the Part 95 rules to allow FM modulation scheme. So if we scroll down and look at sheet 5, there's some technical discussion here around the implementation of the FM modulation scheme. But basically what it's saying is that the bandwidth of the FM signal can be plus or minus 2 kilohertz, which is a little bit narrower than what we see on some of the other radio services like GMRS or FRS or even ham radio. But the limitation is there mostly because of the channel spacing on CB, which is only 10 kilohertz. So they have to limit the modulation bandwidth to plus or minus 2 kilohertz to try and prevent adjacent channel interference. So what this means is that the FM modulation on CB isn't going to be, high fidelity broadcast quality audio, but it should be perfectly fine for the application. So now if we scroll a little further down on page 5, bullet point 8 talks a little bit more about the Motorola petition regarding data on GMRS. And what it goes on to explain here basically is that allowing the automatic position reporting and sort of text messaging feature within the GMRS is just going to enhance the user experience. And it also kind of alludes to the fact that the automatic position reporting could help in sort of search and rescue situations where, perhaps somebody carrying a radio with this feature is hurt and can't communicate through voice, but maybe if the radio is still sending out a periodic location, a search and rescue team could, locate that person. And basically what they're trying to say is that the benefits of those features outweigh any negatives that may be caused by additional traffic on the GMRS and FRS frequencies. And again, just like with the FM modulation scheme on CB, it looks like this was originally considered by the FCC at some point in the past and denied. And it looks like around the same time in 2017 that Cobra filed their petition for the FM modulation. It looks like that's when Motorola filed their petition. And skimming the other paragraphs here on the page, it looks like the FCC had sort of the same discussions that they had with the FM topic and decided that they would grant the ability for automatic position data to be used on GMRS. And then scrolling down in the document, there's some sort of back and forth discussion here about how the automatic data will be implemented, whether or not there'll be busy channel lockout features and things of that nature. I won't go too deep into this. I'll let you guys read this document if you're interested in seeing those details. But the gist of it here is that in point 14, the Commission is recommending that the petition be more or less accepted with a few little amendments to clear up some of these technical issues that were discussed previous in these paragraphs. And as was kind of stated earlier in the document, point 15 kind of restates the fact that the addition of the automatic data within GMRS outweighs any negatives that may kind of crop up. And then scrolling further down, there's some discussion here about the Medtronic petition regarding the medical radio service. But I'm going to skip through all of that because it doesn't really affect me. It's not really relevant to anything that I do, within my radio hobbies. But if you're interested in it, certainly take a look at this document and read through all of this stuff. But I'm going to scroll further down in the document. I'm going to stop and look at paragraph 21. And basically what this is saying is that the manufacturers of the equipment are not required to add these new features. They're just able to add them if they want to. And then scrolling down through the rest of the document, this stuff looks like it's mostly clerical or sort of legal stuff around implementation of these rule changes. And then scrolling down through the last few pages of the document, these are basically the rewritten rules that will be implemented into Part 95, presented as sort of an appendix. And as I've said earlier in the video, if you want to read through this document yourself, there's a link in the description below that will take you to the FCC website where this document resides. So what do you guys think? Are you in favor of these changes, adding FM to the CB band and having automatic positioning available on GMRS? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. If you'd like to support my channel in another way, please consider visiting my Amazon store, which is linked in the description below. Thanks for watching.